Jared Kushner, the president's senior advisor and son-in-law, facing accusations that he hasn't been entirely forthcoming in the Russia probe. It has to do with what was said or not said on the question of WikiLeaks, the site that published the emails stolen from the DNC in the Clinton campaign. And tonight, lawmakers are turning up the heat. They are raising the possibility that Kushner could have another date with Congress. CNN's Boris Sanchez is live at the White House for us. So, Boris, break this down for us.
Hey there, Anna. Yeah, according to a source familiar with Kushner's testimony before Congress, any contact with WikiLeaks during the campaign, he also said that he could not recall anyone else on the campaign having contact with WikiLeaks. Well, the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this week published a letter in which they say specifically that Jared Kushner not only received an email from Donald Trump Jr. detailing some of his contacts with WikiLeaks, but then forwarded that email as well. That letter, signed by Senators Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Grassley, also claims that Jared Kushner failed to provide them with certain key documents that they requested, some of them specifically pertaining to WikiLeaks. The attorney for Jared Kushner, Abbe Lowell, put out a statement saying that senators are asking gotcha questions. Here's some of what he told us. He writes, quote, "This is a classic gotcha question. Mr. Kushner was asked if he has contacts with WikiLeaks, Guccifer, or DC Leaks, and said no. He also said he did not know of any such contacts by the campaign. From all I have now seen, his statement was accurate then, as it is now. In over 6 hours of voluntary testimony, Mr. Kushner answered all questions put to him and demonstrated that there had not been any collusion between the campaign and Russia." The attorney for Jared Kushner also saying that all documents that had been requested by the committee were turned over. So it seems like there's some dispute about what documents they requested. And that may mean, as you said, Anna, that Jared Kushner will head back to Capitol Hill to testify once more.
Okay, so those are the congressional probes into Russia and the Trump campaign and perhaps obstruction of justice issues. But there, of course, is the special counsel investigation, Boris. And we now know a prominent member of Trump's inner circle is about to be interviewed by Robert Mueller's team in their probe. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Anna, that would be Hope Hicks. She's been a long time confidant of the president. She served from very early on in the campaign all the way to his administration. She's now the White House communications director. She's arguably the closest person to the president that is going to be meeting with Robert Mueller. She was also there for some key moments that you're almost certain that he's going to ask about, specifically the crafting of that response aboard Air Force One when it was revealed that after months of denials, Donald Trump Jr. had met with Russians during the campaign. Hope Hicks is expected to meet with the special counsel before the end of the month, Anna.
All right, Boris Sanchez, we appreciate it at the White House tonight. Thank you. A lot of news to talk about with our panel. Joining us now to discuss, CNN crime and justice reporter Shimon Prokupecz, CNN contributor and staff writer for The Washington Post, Adam Entus, and CNN legal analyst Paul Callan. Gentlemen, these non-disclosures, these omissions, they seem to be a pattern right now for Jared Kushner. We already know he left off that meeting with a Russian lawyer on a security clearance form. There's now this email chain on WikiLeaks, a so-called Russian backdoor overture, communications with Michael Flynn that the Senate Judiciary Committee is asking about. And yet Paul Kushner's lawyer says he has been completely cooperative. Do you agree?
He has, and he also, Abbe Lowell said that they're asking him gotcha questions.
Yeah,
which,
do you see it that way?
Well, it's funny. We use that in the press. We use that term, but I think a lot of people don't even know what a gotcha question is. What it is I think, a question designed just to embarrass somebody in the political system, as opposed to legitimately get information. And Lowell's contention is that they complied to the specific requests that were given for relevant documents. And he also says that technically, Jared Kushner's answer was accurate because he said, I did not collude with the Russians, nor do I know anybody else who did. And that would include Don Jr., because he would say the communication that Don Jr. had with WikiLeaks or with the Russians did not constitute collusion. So that's how the defense will shape up from that standpoint.
So it's all about technical wording and
it's
so
exactly
forth. You don't see any legal
wording.
Trouble for Jared Kushner.
No, I don't. To make out a perjury count or an obstruction of justice count, you would have to show that there was an intentional act to deceive Congress. And this is close enough to the line that I think it would be a really hard criminal charge to prove.
And yet, Adam, it is both the leaders of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a Democrat and a Republican, who seem to have a problem with Kushner's response to some of his testimony as well as the document request. Could this have an impact on Kushner's security clearance?
Well, you know, his security clearance remains unresolved as far as we know, going on 10 months now, because the forms were not properly submitted to include his contacts with foreigners, not just Russians, but all foreigners. And so there's just been a series of hiccups in his disclosures, which have obviously made it harder for investigators, the people adjudicating his clearance, to reach a conclusion. I'm not sure that this additional omission, if it indeed was an omission, to the congressional committees would be a factor that the people adjudicating his security clearance would weigh. They obviously are looking at Jared is somebody who is of interest to the investigation by the special counsel. They are interested in why he did not disclose certain things, and obviously they have been interviewing people, and the interplay between the security clearance and the Mueller investigation, it's sort of unclear to us how one may be impacting another, or whether they're completely on different tracks. But clearly there's an issue there that we do not have visibility into the reasons what's holding up that clearance.
Shimon, President Trump's communication director, Hope Hicks, we now know will be interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller's team. We know she is one of his closest, his longest serving aides. What could she know?
Well, I think Boris said it right there, you know, when he talked about her just now. Look, she's been by the president's side for quite some time. What we know, just based on some reporting that we've done, there's a lot of interest with her around the Air Force One meeting, where they were crafting the statement regarding the meeting, Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting at Trump Tower. When that was revealed, the New York Times was working on the story. They were getting ready to publish, and a statement was being crafted. She was present, and it could be that is what Mueller wants to talk to her about. There may be other things. There could be the Comey firing. You know, she's kind of had this window inside the White House where she can serve as a witness to some of the key decisions the president has made. It's not clear that she was part of any team that was making the decisions, but certainly she could be a witness to the people, sort of witnessing what they're doing and how they're coming to make some of these decisions. And as we know, one of the things Mueller is investigating is obstruction of justice by people within the White House. So she could be a witness to any number of those things.
Paul, I would assume that there is a method in terms of when you bring somebody in to testify. Even if you have your list of who you want to talk to, you want to gather information in some cases before you actually bring them in. What does this tell you about where they might be in their investigation now that they are at that point where Hope Hicks will be talking to them?
Well, Mueller's been methodical in this investigation, and you can almost see there was a large circle around the White House, and then he started moving in closer and closer to the real insiders. And that's where he's at now. He's at the people right around the president. And frankly, you don't know what's going to happen when you get that close. And I'll give you an example. In the Nixon impeachment proceedings, when they interviewed Alexander Butterfield, who was a staff member who worked in the White House, all of a sudden they found out about a taping system that nobody knew about before. So you never know what's going to come up when you really get to the insiders who are running the White House. And that's where Mueller is. So I think his investigation is focused and moving quickly, and I think, you know, there'll be a lot of stories probably coming out in the next couple of months, good or bad, for the Trump administration.
Adam, the other person we've learned Robert Mueller wants to talk to is British publicist Rob Goldstone. He helped arrange that Trump Tower meeting with Russians last June, back in 2016. Apparently he's agreed to talk to Mueller, and we now know Jared Kushner, along with Donald Trump Jr., former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, they were all at that meeting. What might Goldstone know that no one else knows? Why is he so important?
Right. Well, I think Mueller, and I think we all want to know why he included in his email to Donald Trump Jr., saying that the Russians were offering incriminating information on Hillary Clinton. Where did he get that language? Did somebody instruct him to put that language in that email? Obviously, that's something that the investigators very much want to get to the bottom of. In addition, why is he volunteering to come? I think the reason why he's making himself available is that he wants at least it to appear publicly, and maybe genuinely he is trying to be and appear cooperative. This is a strategy that you see from the White House as well, from Jared Kushner. It's a strategy to try to dispel the idea that there's an effort to hide anything. And so by volunteering and making himself available without there needing to be a subpoena is one way to try to dispel and tamp down suggestions that there might be something more nefarious at work here. And so that's what I believe is going on here, where he's trying to obviously try to clear the air. Whether that actually does clear the air, we'll have to wait and see.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he cracked a joke about the Russia investigation. Let's listen.
But I just was thinking, you know, I should want to ask you, is Ambassador Kislyak in the room? Before I get started here. Any Russians?
So he's there before a friendly crowd, but Shimon, is it risky for the Attorney General to be making a joke of this, especially coming on the heels of that testimony he had earlier this week when he couldn't seem to recall a whole lot when it came to the questions about Russia and his connections?
Yeah, so Anna, you know, when I heard that, I chuckled, and I think most of us did. Look, the reason why he made that joke is because he was at a hotel where there was intelligence back, you know, last year indicating that there may have been another meeting there with the Attorney General and Kislyak, and he had to actually answer questions about it, and he has denied it. And there's, you know, maybe some different takes on what exactly went on at the hotel, but there was intelligence that indicated there may have been a third meeting. He has denied it. In fact, the FBI director, the former FBI director, James Comey, when he testified before the Hill after he was fired, it was asked of him this question of whether or not Sessions had another meeting. He would not respond to it. He did at some point address it in a closed-door sessions. However, like you said, I mean, I think it is a little risky given how serious some people are taking this investigation. The Mueller investigators are taking this serious. So yeah, it is sort of risky. It's perhaps somewhat funny, but for an attorney general who is still continuing to ask questions, to have to answer questions about his contacts with Russia, certainly probably not the most appropriate time to make that joke.
You know, Anna, who would think we'd get to the point where Jeff Sessions is funnier than Al Franken? But that's where it's gone at this point. All right. Take care.
Thank you, Paul Callan, Shimon Prokopets, Adam Entis. We appreciate all of you. Coming up, President Trump takes a swipe at Al Franken for sexual harassment. But is this tricky territory for him, considering this?
Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign. Total fabrication.
And travel baggage, another member of Trump's cabinet facing questions about private jet flights and why he didn't document them. Plus, the tech world's dirty underbelly. A former worker opens up about the bro culture in Silicon Valley, including it's the issue turning the White House into something of a glass house. President Trump throwing stones at Democratic Senator Al Franken for a sexual harassment scandal while calling attention to his own silence on Republican Roy Moore, not to mention his own controversial past with women. The president seized on this photo released by a woman who says Franken groped her and forcibly kissed her more than a decade ago. Now, President Trump tweeted, "The Al Frankenstein picture is really bad, speaks 1,000 words. Where do his hands go in pictures 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 while she sleeps?" Now, let's remember, more than a dozen women have accused the president on the record of assault and harassment. And of course, there's this.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
To all that, the president has said this.
Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign. Total fabrication.
I want to bring in someone who literally wrote the book on political optics. Josh King is the author of Off Script, an advanced man's guide to White House stagecraft, campaign spectacle, and political suicide. And also with us, Lynn Sweet, the Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Thank you both for being here. Josh, were you surprised that the president would go after Franken?
Not really. I mean, this is a person who will seize on any particular news at any particular time and try to draw attention to himself. If you look at the timestamp of the two tweets, Anna, the first one comes at 9:06 p.m. on Thursday night. The second one comes at 9:15 p.m. on Thursday night. These are not normal working hours for a president. You can imagine Donald Trump on the second floor of the White House, probably watching your competitor, probably watching the top of the news wrap and getting this smart idea in his head that he should take on a person who has been a tough critic of himself, Al Franken, and send those tweets. They're sent in quick succession. They are the normal kind of Trump bullying and trying to take the upper hand when, as you point out in the quick package you read at the top of the segment, he is a guy in a glass house throwing stones with 12 or 13 accusers of his own. And the fact that you and I are sitting having this segment now on a Saturday night after he did that on a Thursday night is testament to the sort of idea that it's not that good for him to have what is now 3 days of news cycle questioning his judgment on sending a tweet like this out on Thursday night. He hasn't addressed the Roy Moore situation.
Exactly, and that's part of it.
He did talk about Al Franken, and now here we are 3 days later still talking about it.
Lynn, on the Franken story, the president's son, Don Jr., actually tweeted this. Is it still alleged when there is a picture? Now, could that same logic be applied to his father's Access Hollywood tape?
Well, of course. I don't know why Don Jr. wants to even start up. I mean, Al Franken put out a statement. He called for an ethics committee investigation of himself. He didn't deny the reality of the photo or anything that the woman, a Los Angeles broadcaster, now said. So and he also had to take it because a lot of Democrats also condemned what he did, including his fellow senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. So it just goes into what sense at all does Don Jr. have even wasting his time doing this when it will, of course, trigger more discussions of what his father said, which is on videotape, which you just played. So sometimes I think you need a psychiatrist and psychologists here to talk about this more than journalists or former advanced-men to really understand why somebody would do something that just ends up, it seems, that brings up stories of their own past poor behavior, or in the case of Donald, his father's.
It certainly created more questions for White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, who was asked how Franken's case is different from the president's. Here's what she said.
Senator Franken has admitted wrongdoing and the president hasn't. I think that's a very clear distinction.
So can they make that argument when it was just a year ago that Trump lined up all of Bill Clinton's accusers at the presidential debate and said, believe these women? Josh?
Well, you know, it wasn't a very wise move back then, and for President Trump to be talking about Al Franken on Thursday night wasn't a wise move a year later. Create an apples and oranges situation, one who has admitted to it and one who didn't. You know, I think we're probably a year away from the midterm elections. President Trump will be asked about this question repeatedly between now and then.
And I think Al Franken, I think just to make sure our facts are straight, he didn't necessarily admit fully to the allegations from Leanne Tweeden, the kiss in particular. He said, I remembered it differently, but regardless, I'm really sorry. And of course, the picture, that obviously is proof of something that was inappropriate. Lynn, you know, the sexual harassment debate, though, is much bigger. It's revived questions about the behavior of former President Bill Clinton, with Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand this week saying he should have resigned over the Lewinsky affair. And I asked Clinton's former chief of staff, Leon Panetta, about that statement. Let's listen.
My own judgment with regards to President Clinton is that he more than paid the price for what he did. The fact that he went through an impeachment process as President of the United States, the House of Representatives voted for articles of impeachment, the Senate did not, but the mere fact that he went through an impeachment process as president means that there will always be a shadow on the legacy of his presidency. So at least from my point of view, I think he's more than paid the price.
So, Lynn, has Clinton paid the price? Have Democrats had a reckoning with what happened during the Clinton era? And can we, in effect, move on?
Well, thank you for asking me this. I covered this extensively. I covered the House Judiciary Committee impeachment. I covered the Senate trial in 1999. And people out there, if you want some spicy reading tonight with salacious details, please Google the Ken Starr report that came out the summer before. And you could get some, like I say, you could get some nice bedtime reading there. This is some of the most humiliating information about a sitting president you could ask for. Now, there's a lot of ways to punish somebody for behavior. Resignation might be one. In the case of Bill Clinton, all the women that you just showed, and I just want America to know this, it's not like no one has heard from them. It is a president who will, as you note, more than he, and I don't know if it's more or less a price, but he paid one. All the women there, from the Paula Jones and everyone, had their stories told. There was great interest in talking to them. Now, we could disagree if the stories were favorable or not, but there was enormous coverage of what these women accused President Clinton of, and by the way, in a lot of detail, including details of what he did and where and what with Monica Lewinsky. So come on, America, if you think this hasn't been litigated, it has been. And it's worth talking about if he should have resigned or not, but it's not as if he did not pay a price.
Josh, this is what we've gotten this week from the president himself on Roy Moore.
Should Roy Moore resign, Mr. President? Do you believe his accusers? Do you believe the accusers of Roy Moore, Mr. President? Should he resign?
So, Josh, reporters shouting questions, the president walking away. You are a former advance man. You know this is going to keep happening. How do you handle it?
Well, Anna, those questions were asked of the president in the diplomatic reception room on Thursday. This was the big readout speech from the Asia trip. He had been speaking, I think, for about 30 minutes, and the pool is escorted into the room to be able to witness these remarks. There's no way to really get out of a scene like this without sort of ducking the questions as he did. The president put out a statement on the Asia trip that was in the raft of statements that said, if these allegations are true, then Moore should step aside. Since then, so many of his Republican colleagues have qualified that answer by saying he should step aside. The president has not yet done that. And so I think he walks a very thin line between upsetting his base, who he thinks would not want him to criticize or to withdraw his support of Roy Moore, and now trying to get out of Dodge, basically, without answering these questions. It's difficult to know how many more days that he could avoid being on camera and being asked this question. Sarah Sanders has answered many times that it's for the voters of Alabama to decide, but sometime soon the president is going to be on camera in a situation like this. We ask that question in a way that he can't walk away and will have to answer it.
Well, of course, the election's still a few weeks away. It's not till December 12th, so there is still time for more questions to come forward. Be interesting to see if he changes his response. Josh King and Lynn Sweet, thank you both so much.
And thank you.
Coming up, another woman comes forward with allegations against Senate candidate Roy Moore. So how are Alabama voters reacting to this?
The moment we walked in, it was a full-on assault. I mean, he was very, very flirtatious.
Welcome back. Yet another woman has come forward with accusations that U.S. Senate candidate Roy Moore of Alabama touched her inappropriately. Tina Johnson says Moore groped her when she was in his law office. This was in 1991. It's the first allegation against Moore at a time when he was married to his wife, Kayla. She told CNN's Aaron Burnett about this experience.
The moment we walked in, it was a full-on assault. I mean, he was very, very flirtatious. And commenting constantly the whole time, and it was not like for 5 minutes. It was like we was there for a long period of time. It was so uncomfortable. I knew something was up, but I just ignored it, tried, just what it was. He proceeded to come to the end of the desk and really close up on me.
You said so close you could sort of feel his breath?
Right. Actually, I think his knee might have been touching my knee. His hands were not on me, just like maybe his knee was brushing mine or something. And then when it was time for us to leave, my mother had got up and left the room, to go out the door. Well, when she was going out the door, then I proceeded out, and he just grabbed me from behind on my buttocks, and he just squeezed it really hard. And I remember thinking, I was so ashamed. I felt humiliated in that moment. It took everything out of me.
Despite the growing list of accusers, Moore is vowing to stay in the Senate race. CNN correspondent Nick Valencia has the latest from Alabama. Nick.
Anna, this has been a difficult week for the Republican Senate candidate. In the face of sexual assault allegations, however, he and his campaign have remained defiant. It was earlier this week that we saw faith leaders come to defense of Moore, saying that his character in the GOP establishment. They went so far because of his policies and his principles.
It is unlikely that the accuser can definitely prove Christian ministers. Even before these allegations made national headlines, it endangered the children of Alabama.
Perhaps Moore's biggest supporter is his wife, Kayla, who yesterday was joined by about 30 or 40 women who say that they personally know Roy Moore and that the accusations that are being leveled against him do not speak to the character of the man because of his policies and his principles.
It is unlikely that the can definitely prove Christian ministers. Even before these allegations made national headlines.
Kayla, who yesterday was joined by about 30 or 40 women who say that they personally know Roy Moore and that the accusations that are being leveled against him do not speak to the character of the man that they know. Kayla Moore said that she and her husband are in a political fight and that the battle will continue to go on. There's no sign of Moore withdrawing anytime soon. Anna?
All right, Nick Valencia in Alabama, thank you. Coming up, flying high on the taxpayer's dime, the new allegations against Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke and why it could be a problem for the president, who promised to drain the swamp. So just weeks after a member of Trump's cabinet was forced to resign for taking pricey private jets on the taxpayer's dime, another member of the president's team is now coming under scrutiny for his travel habits. CNN's Tom Foreman takes a closer look at the controversy surrounding Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke.
To hear the horseback riding, hunting, handshaking Secretary of the Interior tell it, his official trips are a model of transparency.
Every time I travel, I submit the travel plan to the ethics department that evaluates it line by line to make sure that I am above the law and I follow the law.
But a probe by his own department's inspector general is casting serious doubt on that claim. Our investigation has been delayed, Mary Kendall wrote in a memo, by absent or incomplete documentation for several pertinent trips and a review process that failed to include proper documentation and accountability. Among the trips drawing scrutiny, a flight to the Virgin Islands in late March where he attended a Republican fundraiser and went snorkeling at a national monument. A trip to his native Montana in May, during which he attended a political rally and spent a day and a half at his home. And in June, a journey to meet with a professional hockey team in Las Vegas owned by a political backer before taking a chartered plane to his Montana home once again. His office notes he has done some official business on each of these trips. He says he charters private jets only when commercial flights won't work. And even though he spent almost 73,000 taxpayer dollars this way since taking office, Zinke is making no apologies.
I'd just like to address, in the words of General Schwarzkopf, a little BS on travel.
Zinke's staff has said part of the problem is a paperwork mess they inherited from the Obama administration. The inspector's investigation is not done, and they issued this memo in hopes of addressing that matter. Still, several other cabinet members are also being scrutinized, and one has already resigned over questions about what in some cases looks suspiciously like private travel on the public's dime.
Keeping them honest. Thank you, Tom Foreman. Coming up, shocking stories of sexual harassment in Silicon Valley, including one worker who says her office had a kink room.
Silicon Valley has a dirty underbelly, and that is that women are viewed as the people that clean up underwear and do the dishes.
From Hollywood to the world of media to Capitol Hill and beyond, the issue of sexual assault and harassment is dominating the national conversation right now. We're talking about it here on TV and online. The hashtag #MeToo. That movement has given a voice to victims after years of silence. In the upcoming special Divided We Code, CNN's Lori Siegel investigates this issue in the tech industry, that included a space in the office called a kink room. Here's a preview.
We had a room at the office that was called the Kink Room. We had a Kink VR demo in there apparently before I started, and that name just stuck. And so anybody that attended our event would very much know that, oh, there's a bed at this event. It wasn't like an office party, it was a party. So people probably used the room for God knows what.
Did you ever have to come in to clean up parties?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I would every once in a while find underwear in that room, and we would, make jokes about it and have to clean it up.
But take a second, Daisy, you had to clean up underwear from your office space.
Yeah, that was a part of it. Startup life, I guess.
And I guess that's my question, is it?
That's the sad truth. That is what is a part of it. Silicon Valley has a dirty underbelly, and that is that women are viewed as the people that clean up underwear and do the dishes.
Do you think that you got the same opportunities as men at the office?
No, most definitely not. It was very well known that I, as the general manager of Upload, did the dishes. We had a male general manager before me, and he did not do that. That being said, every once in a while people would help me, but it was part of my role, and it was very much distinct to me and not necessarily the general manager role.
I want to bring in CNN senior tech correspondent Lori Siegel. What a revealing interview. What happened with this company?
I mean, for me, I look at it and it was a perfect storm. First of all, I've spoken to the Upload founders and they said, it wasn't just the women that did the dishes. It was the role that they had, and that's why they did that more. But everyone pitched in. And I'm thinking to myself, it's 2017 and we're having a conversation about women who say they had to clean up underwear and condoms from parties and do the dishes at a startup. So it was a perfect storm. This is a startup with, early 20-something-year-old founders with no HR structure, with millions in funding. The idea was to make virtual reality cool, so they would throw these parties. And then, down the road, it took a lawsuit. And it wasn't Daisy who filed the lawsuit, who you just heard from. It was a woman named Elizabeth, who's not really allowed to speak about it because it's been settled. And it was interesting because Daisy said to me, she said she was actually the one that was handed the lawsuit when it came in. And she said it wasn't until I saw it all in writing that I knew it wasn't okay what happened there. And that's where I think we kind of get into this idea of the Me Too movement, right?
Yeah.
With you see all this stuff in writing, and you see women and other victims of sexual harassment coming forward and then sharing their story. And I think that's kind of what spurred it. And even personally, having covered tech for so many years, I started thinking when I looked at this of, some terrible text an investor sent me at a weird hour saying weird things. And you begin to understand that, this really is an issue.
And it isn't okay.
And it's not okay. And I think that's why we're hearing people speak out.
Because I think culturally, societally, we sometimes have brushed over this sort of treatment because it's somewhat socially acceptable or is considered normal. And what has been exposed is, wait a minute, this shouldn't be normal.
Yeah.
And yet we also hear from people who say, I was afraid to come forward because of the potential consequences. Is anything being done in the tech world to help emboldening these women to come forward without the fear of what that could mean for them in their professional lives or personal lives?
Well, this is where it's interesting because it's a real problem in tech, but tech can always provide a solution. And I think we're just seeing there's actually a company that's launching in the next couple of weeks called All Voices. You have a VP at 21st Century Fox. Her name is Claire Schmidt. You also have a woman named Susan Fowler. And her name might sound familiar because she was an Uber engineer who actually spoke out against Uber, and it shed light on sexism. And they're creating a tech tool for people to anonymously try to report harassment and what's happening at their company. And what All Voices will do, it'll analyze data and send it back to the company. So we'll see how that works out. But you want some kind of solution because it's really difficult to come forward because women, all sorts of people, fear retaliation for speaking out against sexual harassment.
Real quick, you also are hearing from men regarding this Me Too movement.
Sure. You know, I was just at a tech conference and I said, tell me what people won't say out loud. And what one investor said is, well, a lot of us don't want to take meetings with women after a certain hour. We're being a lot more cautious. You know, we're scared, you know, this is so polarizing that this is going to impact us. It's a witch hunt right now. So we have to find a better way to have a civil conversation about this to really push it forward.
And to bring men and women together on the
Exactly.
issue. Lori Siegel, thank you so
Thank you.
much. The entire special Divided We Code, it airs December 9th. In the meantime, be sure to catch Lori's Mostly Human series streaming right now on CNN Go. We're back after this.